Good morning, dear students. Welcome to the online class. Today I am going to discuss about the pharmacotherapy of peptic ulcer. Peptic ulcer is one of the common gastrointestinal disorder. There are four types of peptic ulcers. The first is duodenal ulcer, gastric ulcer, stress ulcer, NSAID induced ulcer. We mean here non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs induced ulcer, that is people who are on chronic therapy with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin, indomethacin, diclofenac. They are more prone for drug-induced ulcers. Peptic ulceration occurs mostly in areas bathed by gastric juice. There is a higher association of peptic ulcer with Helicobacteria pylori. Now, uh, factors responsible for peptic ulcer include exposure to gastric acid and pepsin in the stomach and the duodenum. It occurs due to the imbalance between the aggressive factors and the defensive factors. The aggressive factors here we mean the acid, that is the hydrochloric acid, pepsin, bile, and H. pylori infection, that is Helicobacter pylori, which is a gram negative bacteria. Then the defensive factors include the gastric mucus and the bicarbonate secretion, the prostaglandins, nitric oxide, and innate resistance of mucosal cells, etc. In a nutshell, the factors responsible for peptic ulcer include acid hypersecretion found in 30 to 40% of duodenal ulcers, hereditary factors like rapid gastric emptying and a large parietal cell mass, diminished gastric mucosal blood flow during stress, incompetent pyloric sphincter, high gastric acid output in stressful situations like whenever you are facing some interviews or any stage fear, or when the student is getting exposed to external examiner during viva voce. Then some of the exogenous factors include smoking, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, chronic therapy with glucocorticoids, and alcohol. So before going to the pharmacotherapy of uh, the peptic ulcer, let us go through the regulation of acid secretion, that is the physiology of gastric acid secretion. So one of the most important enzyme is the hydrogen potassium ATPase, or otherwise known as the proton pump enzyme, which is again governed by other neurotransmitters like histamine, acetylcholine, and the gastrin. Of these important three secretagogues, that is histamine, acetylcholine, gastrin, histamine plays an important role in the secretion of gastric acid secretion. This histamine acts via the histamine 2 receptors. Uh, Actually, histamine has got 4 receptors: H1, H2, H3, H4. You know, H1 uh, is mainly involved in uh, mm, allergy. Histamine 2 receptors, which are present in the uh, gastric parietal cells. So, this acts via the H2 receptors. By increasing the CAMP production, it stimulates the enzyme proton pump, and thereby the hydrogen ions are secreted. Acetylcholine acts via the M1 and M3 receptors, and gastrin acts via the CCKB receptors. Coming to the mechanism of acid inhibition, once you inhibit the proton pump, that is a final common step in the secretion of acid, the entire acid production can be inhibited. So this can be achieved even indirectly by blocking the histamine 2 receptors, by uh, antimuscarinics M1, M3, and also by increasing the prostaglandin secretion by using the prostaglandin analogues. Now coming to the classification of the drugs used in the pharmacotherapy of uh, pharmacotherapy of the peptic ulcer. The first group includes reduction of gastric acid secretion. This is achieved by using H2 antihistaminics, that is H2 blockers. The prototype drug is the cimetidine, followed by other drugs including ranitidine, famotidine, roxetidine, etc. The most important group of drugs in the management of peptic ulcer are proton pump inhibitors. As I was telling you, the enzyme proton pump, that is hydrogen potassium ATPase, which is a final common step in the secretion of the acid. Once this proton pump is inhibited, the acid secretion is inhibited for more than 24 to 48 hours. Again, the drugs included in this group are the omeprazole being the prototype, lansoprazole, pantoprazole, rabeprazole, esomeprazole. So, all these are prodrugs. And the next group includes the anticholinergics. I was telling you the acetylcholine also plays indirectly for secreting the gastric acid via the M1 and M3 receptors. So, we have M1 specific antimuscarinic drug like pyrazapine, and other drugs include propantholin and oxyphenolium. And prostaglandin analog, PGE1 analog, misoprostol. The next group includes the neutralization of the gastric acid by using antacids. So, it is a type of a chemical antagonism. Again, this can be classified into systemic antacids and non-systemic antacids. Systemic antacids, here we mean that there is some absorption of the antacid producing alkalosis. The examples in this group include sodium bicarbonate and sodium citrate. Non-systemic antacids include magnesium hydroxide, magnesium trisilicate, aluminum hydroxide, calcium carbonate, etc. And third group is the ulcer protective. They are sucralfate, CBS, that is colloidal bismuth subsalicylate or citrate, and again misoprostol can also be included as one of the ulcer protective, that is a prostaglandin analog. So, what they do here is they form a thin coat, a layer through which the hydrogen ions are impermeable, or else the gastric acid is impermeable to pass through this barrier. And last but not the least group is the anti-helicobacter pylori drugs, amoxicillin, clarithromycin, metronidazole, tinidazole, tetracycline. We cannot use monotherapy from the antibiotics because of the danger of resistance. Always a combination of drugs is used along with acid suppression from the H2 blockers or the proton pump inhibitors in the form of regimens like triple regimen or quadruple regimen, which is used for 4 to 6 weeks. In a nutshell, again this is a parietal cell showing the various receptors, that is the gastrin receptor, histamine 2 receptor, then prostaglandin E receptor, M1 and M3 receptors, and ultimately the proton pump, which is situated on the luminal side of the stomach. So, here it is showing how the mechanism of the physiology of acid production. So, gastrin, once it binds to the gastrin receptor, there is a release of calcium which will activate the protein kinase and ultimately activates the proton pump. Next, the binding of the histamine 2 receptor by the histamine, which produces the cyclic AMP thereby activating the there is generation of CAMP activating the protein kinase and then the proton pump. And next comes the prostaglandin binding to the prostaglandin receptors and the acetylcholine binding to the M3 or M1 receptors in the parietal cells, again producing calcium which will stimulate the protein kinase, and ultimately the proton pump is stimulated to produce the gastric acid secretion. And in the lumen there is chemical antagonism by the antacids like sodium bicarbonate, aluminum hydroxide, then magnesium hydroxide, etc. So ranitidine is a H2 blocker which binds to the H2 receptor by competitive antagonism and thereby blocking the action of the histamine. Omeprazole is a proton pump inhibitor. It is a final common pathway which is inhibited in the gastric acid production. Then you have misoprostol, which is a prostaglandin analog which aids in the secretion of mucus and the bicarbonate. So in a nutshell, the action of anti-ulcer drug groups. There is a role of the tranquilizers in the inhibition of acid secretion, that is by inhibiting the stress causing the anxiolysis, the vagus nerve is inhibited, thereby the acid secretion is also inhibited by inhibiting the acetylcholine. Anticholinergics by directly acting on the M1 and M3 receptors will inhibit the acetylcholine mediated gastric acid secretion, and then H2 blockers like ranitidine and cimetidine by blocking the H2 receptors, they also prevent the gastric acid secretion. And we have the proton pump inhibitors, suppression of gastric acid secretion, that is a final common pathway. We have other group, that is antacids which neutralize the gastric acid in the lumen of the stomach, and prostaglandin E1 analog like misoprostol will aid in the secretion of the gastric mucus and bicarbonate, which are protective factors, defensive factors rather. And then we have ulcer protective drugs like sucralfate and colloidal bismuth subsalicylate or citrate, which will coat the ulcer and act as a barrier by inhibiting the penetration of the hydrogen ions and thereby act as ulcer protectives. Coming to the individual drug groups. First let us discuss about the H2 antagonists. The examples under this group include cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, loxatidine, nizatidine and lafetidine. Cimetidine is a prototype. These days we are not using cimetidine because of adverse drug potential. Lafetidine is a second generation histamine 2 blocker, H2 blocker. They are the most effective drugs for acid peptic disease, but of late taken over by the proton pump inhibitors. Coming to the mechanism of action of the H2 blockers. Histamine induces gastric secretion via H2 receptors. Cimetidine and other drugs in the H2 blockers are competitive antagonists and block histamine induced gastric acid secretion. All phases of gastric acid secretion like basal, cyclic, neurogenic and gastric are suppressed. The volume of gastric juice, pepsin and intrinsic factor secretion are all reduced. 60 to 70% of inhibition is in overall 24-hour acid output is decreased. So also The stress and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug induced ulcers are also prevented. Coming to the pharmacological actions, pharmacokinetics, cimetidine is adequately absorbed orally. Bioavailability is only 60 to 80% due to high first pass, that is 60 to 80% only. It crosses placenta and reaches milk, but penetration in brain is poor because of hydrophilic nature. About 2/3 of the dose is excreted unchanged in the urine and bile, the rest is oxidized metabolites. T half is 2 to 3 hours. Dose reduction is required in renal failure. The important aspect of cimetidine is adverse effects. Cimetidine is well tolerated. Cimetidine causes ADRs in less than 5% of the patients, especially in the geriatric group of population. Mild effects include headache, dizziness, bowel upset and dry mouth, and CNS effects include confusional state, restlessness, convulsions and coma, more commonly seen in elderly on IV injection, may cause confusional state, hallucinations and convulsions. Endocrinal effects: gynecomastia, loss of libido, impotence and temporary decrease in the sperm count. Because it acts as a non-steroidal anti-androgen and displaces dihydrotestosterone from its binding site. Cimetidine is involved in many drug interactions because it inhibits CYP 450 isoenzymes. So, and interferes with the metabolism of many drugs like warfarin, tolbutamide, phenytoin and clopidogrel. The dose for cimetidine is for ulcer healing 400 milligram PD, that is twice a day, or 800 milligram at bedtime, and maintenance dose is 400 milligram at bedtime. And for stress ulcers it is 50 milligram per hour IV infusion. It is available as 200, 400, 800 milligram tabs and 200 milligram per ml injection. So, once the ranitidine has been introduced, it has slowly taken over the cimetidine. The important differences between the ranitidine and cimetidine are: ranitidine is 5 times more potent and the endocrine effects and anti-androgenic effects when compared to cimetidine are nil and less permeability to brain and therefore no central nervous system effects like convulsions and coma and hallucinations, and it does not enter into drug interactions which are of no clinical relevance. So, students, here you have to remember one point. There is a frequently asked question by the university in the theory: what is the rationale of using ranitidine and other H2 blockers over cimetidine, or mention the differences between the cimetidine and ranitidine. So, let us discuss next drug, the ranitidine. Ranitidine is more potent, 5 times more potent than cimetidine, with a longer duration of action, with 24-hour acid suppression, no anti-androgenic action, lesser permeability to the brain and therefore less CNS effects. Overall incidence of side effects is very low. It is available as 150 milligram, 300 milligram tablets and 50 milligram per 2 ml injection. Next drug is the famotidine, which has a longer duration of action and like ranitidine does not have any adverse effects when compared to cimetidine. Roxatidine, similar to ranitidine in profile, no anti-androgenic or CYP inhibitory action. Coming to the therapeutic uses of the H2 blockers. So before learning, I would like to enlighten one point here. The proton pump inhibitors, which we are going to discuss from the next slide, have largely replaced the H2 blockers because they produce a more complete acid suppression, clinically more effective, well tolerated, and are safe when compared to H2 blockers. Coming to the first therapeutic indication is peptic ulcer. With H2 blockers, 60 to 80% of the duodenal ulcer heal in 4 weeks and 70 to 90% of the gastric ulcers heal in 8 weeks. Healing rates are lower with gastric ulcers. Non-ulcer dyspepsia. So, non-ulcer dyspepsia is usually accompanied by abdominal flatulence, gas, bloating, pain, nausea and early satiety. They also respond both to placebo as well as to H2 blockers. Acute stress ulcers and erosive gastritis. The third important indication is acute stress ulcers and erosive gastritis. So, seen in hepatic coma, severe burns, trauma, prolonged intensive care, prolonged surgeries, renal failure, they are usually associated with gastric erosions and bleeding. So, intravenous infusion of an H2 blocker successively prevents the gastric lesions and hemorrhage. Next is the indication Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. So, this Zollinger-Ellison syndrome is a gastric hypersecretory state due to a rare tumor secreting the gastrin. So, H2 blockers are tried but with incomplete results, whereas PPS that is proton pump inhibitors are the drugs of choice. Definitive treatment for this gastric Zollinger-Ellison syndrome is surgical. Then you have other indications in the H2 blockers are gastroesophageal reflux disease. H2 blockers provide symptomatic relief only in stage 1 of gastroesophageal reflux disease. They produce a symptomatic relief. Then prophylaxis of aspiration pneumonia. So, given preoperatively as pre-anesthetic medicament, they reduce the risk of the aspiration of gastric contents during anesthesia and surgery. The other off-label uses of this H2 blockers are urticaria. They have an adjuvant beneficial effect in certain cases of urticaria who do not respond to H1 antagonists or antihistaminics alone. Coming to the lofetidine, which is a second generation H2 blocker, the special feature of this drug is apart from decreasing acid secretion, it is also claimed to enhance nitric oxide production and improve gastric mucosal blood flow and exert a gastroprotective effect by increasing mucus production and somatostatin release. Now, till now I have discussed about the role of the H2 blockers in the management of the peptic ulcer or pharmacotherapy of peptic ulcer, but these drugs have been superseded by the proton pump inhibitors because they are more safe, there is complete suppression of the acid with better healing rates. Continuation of the pharmacotherapy of peptic ulcer. The next group of drugs in the classification includes the important group most frequently asked theory question, proton pump inhibitors, in a short form PPIs. They are the inhibitors of the enzyme hydrogen potassium ATPase, otherwise known as proton pump. Proton pump is an important enzyme in the secretion of the gastric acid, where the H ions are secreted in exchange of potassium in the lumen of the stomach. The receptor mediated binding of the acetylcholine, histamine, gastrin results in the activation of the protein kinases, which in turn stimulates the proton pump. This is the slide showing you the mechanism of action of the proton pump inhibitors, the examples being the omeprazole, esomeprazole, etc. All these drugs are the prodrugs which require activation in the gastric lumen. So, the important examples in this group are the omeprazole being the prototype. They belong to the benzimidazoles. The other drugs in the class are the esomeprazole, lansoprazole, pantoprazole, espantoprazole, rabeprazole. Coming to the mechanism of action, all PPIs are prodrugs and are available as acid resistant enteric coated drugs which prevent from premature degradation by the gastric acid. The coating is removed in the alkaline medium of the duodenum. The drug now, which is a weak base, gets absorbed and transported to the parietal cell, gets ionized and does not diffuse back, that is, it is trapped. Hence, here it binds covalently to the hydrogen potassium ATPase enzyme or the proton pump and causes its inhibition irreversibly, that is inactivation, irreversible inactivation of the proton pump, which is the final common step in the gastric acid secretion. Acid secretion resumes only with the synthesis of the new proton pump, which takes around 18 hours. Proton pumps inhibit both basal and stimulated gastric acid secretion by more than 90%. They are taken on an empty stomach followed by a meal after 1 hour. So, omeprazole, the prototype, inhibits the final common step in the gastric acid secretion, and it has overtaken H2 blockers for acid peptic disorders. There is a dose dependent suppression of gastric acid secretion. It can totally abolish gastric acid secretion, reacts with the hydrogen potassium ATPase enzyme and inactivates it irreversibly by binding covalently. Oral absorption of omeprazole is 50%. It is highly protein bound. It is metabolized in liver and the metabolites are excreted in the urine. As already said, they are given as enteric coated granules in capsule or enteric coated tablets. Some of the preparations are available as intravenous, like pantoprazole and rabeprazole. Their half-life is 1.5 hours. Since it requires acid for activation, it is usually given 1 hour before the meals. Esomeprazole has got higher oral bioavailability when compared to omeprazole, better control of intragastric pH than omeprazole. Lansoprazole has higher oral bioavailability, faster in action, slightly longer T-half. Pantoprazole similarly in potency and clinical efficacy to omeprazole, more acid stable, higher oral bioavailability. Intravenous route is used for bleeding peptic ulcers and for acute stress ulcers. Rabeprazole, fastest acid suppression, given either orally or intravenously. Potency and efficacy are similar to omeprazole. Coming to the therapeutic uses of the proton pump inhibitors. The first and the foremost important indication is the peptic ulcer, either in the duodenal or the gastric ulcer, and they are an important component of the triple regimen for eradication of H. pylori therapy, that is Helicobacter pylori, which is a gram-negative bacteria usually associated with the duodenal and gastric ulcers. In the management of peptic ulcer, PPIs are more effective than H2 blockers because of complete 90% acid suppression. Advantages over H2 blockers being pain relief is rapid, faster healing of ulcers, duodenal ulcers heal within 4 weeks, gastric ulcers take 4 to 8 weeks. PPIs are an important part of the integral part of the triple and quadruple regimen of anti-H. pylori therapy. PPIs are also drugs of choice in NSAID induced ulcers. I have been telling about the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Their prolonged treatment may cause ulcers. So, to prevent the complications of NSAID induced ulcers. Next indication being the bleeding peptic ulcer. The chronicity of a peptic ulcer may result in bleeding, resulting in hematemesis and also perforation. Intravenous proton pump inhibitor therapy inhibits gastric acid and reduces rebleeding after therapeutic endoscopy. Stress ulcers. Intravenous pantoprazole is an effective prophylactic for stress ulcer. Other indications being gastroesophageal reflux disease. They provide a rapid symptomatic relief and is more effective than H2 blockers in promoting healing of the esophageal erosions. I was telling you about the H2 blockers in GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disease. H2 blockers are useful only in the stage 1 of the gastroesophageal reflux disease. Then other indication is important indication is Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, as already told, it is a hypersecretory state due to gastrinoma where there is excessive production of the gastrin. High dose of PPIs are the drugs of choice to heal the ulcers. In inoperable cases are also treated with the PPIs and other gastric hypersecretory states including like systemic mastocytosis, endocrine adenomas, etc. PPIs are also important as pre-anesthetic medication in the prophylaxis of aspiration pneumonia given preoperatively to prevent aspiration pneumonia during prolonged anesthesia and surgery. The adverse effects of PPIs, they are generally well tolerated, they are minimal and are very safe drugs. This includes nausea, loose stools, headache. Because of prolonged acid suppression, it may result in low vitamin B12 absorption because acid is required for the absorption in complex with intrinsic factor. There may be accelerated osteoporosis due to impaired calcium absorption with the risk of bone fracture. PPAs are also the inhibitors of CYP2C19 and prevents the conversion of clopidogrel to active metabolite, so their concomitant use is not indicated. There is increased incidence of pneumonia due to atrophic gastritis and achlorhydria. Coming to the another group of drugs, that is prostaglandin analogs, the misoprostol. Role of prostaglandin PGE analog is PGE is produced by the gastric mucosa, has a protective role by inhibiting the acid secretion, promoting mucus secretion and bicarbonate secretion, promotes mucosal blood flow and has mild cytoprotective action. So, misoprostol is a longer acting synthetic prostaglandin E analog. It inhibits gastric acid secretion, promotes mucus and bicarbonate secretion, promotes mucosal blood flow, and acts as a cytoprotective. But the adverse effects with misoprostol are disturbing. It causes dose related diarrhea and abdominal cramps. It also causes uterine bleeding and miscarriage because it promotes uterine contractions and causes abortion. Therefore, should not be used in case of pregnancy. Patient acceptance is low due to multiple doses. It has to be given 4 times a day. Indications are treatment of NSAID associated ulcers and blood loss. That is, whenever a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug is indicated in case of rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis for prolonged therapy, it should be usually combined with a prostaglandin analog like misoprostol to prevent the ulcers as a prophylactic and also blood loss. Contraindications are pregnancy. So, one important question from the university in theory is, what is the prostaglandin analog used in peptic ulcer or misoprostol, or it can be also asked in ulcer protectives. Coming to the next group, antacids. Antacids are the substances which on ingestion react chemically with gastric acid and lower the acidity of gastric contents. By doing so, they relieve the pain and relief of muscle spasm. That is, they cause a chemical type of antagonization where there is neutralization of the gastric acid. They are one of the most commonly available OTC drugs. Here we mean OTC, that is over the counter drugs which are available without a prescription for the management of dyspepsia. There are two types of antacids: non-systemic antacids which are not absorbed, which are insoluble, and systemic antacids which are absorbed and produce alkalosis. The non-systemic antacids include, first the systemic antacids include sodium bicarbonate and sodium citrate, and non-systemic antacids include aluminum hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide, magnesium trisilicate, calcium carbonate. Excuse me. Mechanism of action. Neutralization of the gastric hydrochloric acid by acting as weak bases and raising the gastric pH to 4, and sodium bicarbonate raises the pH to 7. So, systemic antacids like sodium bicarbonate acts instantaneously, but the duration of action is short, raises the pH to 7. The demerits are, since it is a systemic antacid, there is some amount of absorption and causes alkalosis, produces carbon dioxide gas distension, discomfort, belching, risk of perforation, acid rebound, and increase of sodium load, which may worsen the edema and which may aggravate the congestive heart failure. It is usually used to alkalize the urine and to treat the acidosis. Coming to the non-systemic antacids, these are the basic compounds react in the stomach to form chloride salt. The chloride salt again reacts with the intestinal bicarbonate, so that bicarbonate is not spared for absorption, so no acid base disturbance occurs. So, there are certain antacid combinations, like magnesium hydroxide is usually combined with aluminum hydroxide. The rationale of combining such fixed dose combination include: magnesium hydroxide is a fast acting antacid, whereas aluminum hydroxide is a slow acting, so produces a sustained effect. Magnesium salts are usually laxative, whereas aluminum salts are constipating. So, there is bowel movement is least affected and the dose of the individual drug can be minimized. Usually available as preparations gelusil liquid and polycrol fruit gel, used in peptic ulcers and gastroesophageal reflux disease. They afford a faster symptomatic relief in gastroesophageal reflux. They may be used off and on for acid eructations and heartburn. They are the self-prescribed OTC drugs for dyspepsia and acidity and also used in non-ulcer dyspepsia. So, the present day antacids are usually the aluminum hydroxide and magnesium hydroxide, usually available as OTC preparations. So, what are the precautions we take whenever we are advising antacids? At least 30 minutes when taken in an empty stomach or 2 hours taken after a meal. Some of the side effects of the non-systemic antacids: if purely aluminum hydroxide or trisilicate is used, constipation. Magnesium hydroxide causes osmotic diarrhea, and in case of renal failure, aluminum hydroxide produces aluminum toxicity and encephalopathy. Absorption of certain drugs is impaired, so better not combine with tetracyclines, fluoroquinolones and iron. Clinical importance: interactions can be avoided by taking antacids 2 hours before or after ingestion of other drugs. So, here one important question, note: what is the rationale of combining magnesium hydroxide with aluminum hydroxide in the management of peptic ulcer? So, you have to write the advantages of the FDC, that is the combination. Coming to the next group in the management of pharmacotherapy of peptic ulcer. Ulcer protectives are mucosal protective agents. They are defined as the drugs which act as a diffusion barrier to gastric acid and prevent further ulcer erosion and promote healing. Once again I repeat, ulcer protectives are the drugs that act as a diffusion barrier to gastric acid and prevent further ulcer erosion and promote healing. The drugs include sucralfate, colloidal bismuth compounds and misoprostol. Misoprostol has already been discussed in the previous slides as prostaglandin analogues. So, sucralfate, coming to the sucralfate, it is a complex of sulfated sucrose and aluminum hydroxide. The mechanism of action: in the acid environment of the stomach, it forms a gel which coats the ulcer crater for more than 6 hours and forms a physicochemical barrier which may act as a mucosal defense. An antacid is usually contraindicated for a half an hour before or after the sucralfate. It is usually administered 1 hour before the meal and at bedtime. The side effects include constipation and increases the risk of nosocomial pneumonia. Coming to the next compound in this group is colloidal bismuth compounds, either colloidal bismuth subcitrate or salicylate. Mechanism of action: they are not absorbed and the white precipitate bismuth chelate formed in the gastric acid coats the ulcer crater which is impermeable to hydrogen ion. It also inhibits the Helicobacter pylori bacteria directly and hence it forms an integral part of the quadruple regimen in the eradication of the H. pylori bacteria. But the important side effects of CBS, that is colloidal bismuth subcitrate, include constipation, black stools, blackening of the tongue and the dentures, and neurotoxicity. They are usually administered half an hour before each meal and at bedtime, and is also an important component of quadruple regimen. The available compounds are bismuth subsalicylate, bismuth subcitrate, and bismuth dinitrate. What is H. pylori? That is Helicobacter pylori is a bacteria which is a gram-negative bacteria which is uniquely adapted to survive in the acid environment of the stomach. It causes chronic gastritis, dyspepsia, gastric and duodenal peptic ulcer, gastric lymphoma, and gastric carcinoma. So for the eradication of H. pylori, which is associated with this acid peptic disorders, there are various regimens like triple regimen and quadruple regimen by using combination of 2 to 3 antibiotics or antimicrobial agents along with acid suppression agents like H2 blockers or proton pump inhibitors. What are the advantages of the anti-H. pylori regimens like triple drug therapy or quadruple drug therapy? One is faster ulcer healing, prevents relapse. Proton pump inhibitors enhance effectiveness of anti-H. pylori antibiotics where the pH is more than 5 for 16 to 18 hours. PPI is an integral part of the regimen. Achieves 86 to 90% of the eradication rate. But the disadvantages being the very costly and it is complex and expensive, poor patient compliance. So the disadvantage with the monotherapy being the resistance, emergence of resistance to clarithromycin and metronidazole. So in the presence of in vitro evidence of resistance to metronidazole, amoxicillin should be used instead. So a 14-day quadruple regimen is also used whenever there is resistance to clarithromycin and metronidazole. That is, quadruple regimen is 3 antibiotics combined with a proton pump inhibitor. The best among the triple regimen therapy is either omeprazole or a lansoprazole in the dose of omeprazole 20 mg and lansoprazole 30 mg for acid suppression, clarithromycin 500 mg twice a day, amoxicillin 1 gram twice a day or metronidazole 500 mg twice a day, given for 14 days, that is 2 weeks, followed only by a proton pump inhibitor like omeprazole or a lansoprazole for 4 to 6 weeks. Short regimens for 7 to 10 days are not effective. Coming to the quadruple regimen where CBS is included, that is colloidal bismuth subsalicylate. This consists of, whenever a triple therapy fails, a quadruple therapy is employed. This consists of a proton pump inhibitor for acid suppression, omeprazole 20 mg or a lansoprazole 30 mg twice a day, the bismuth subsalicylate 2 tablets, that is 120 milligrams 4 times a day, metronidazole 250 milligrams 4 times a day, and a tetracycline 500 milligram 4 times a day. So in a nutshell, the pharmacotherapy of peptic ulcer includes the adjuvant drugs like tranquilizers will reduce the stress and inhibits the vagus nerve and thereby decreases the secretion of acetylcholine. And one important note, anticholinergics like pyranzapine, which is M1 selective. M1 selective pyranzapine blocker blocks the acid secretion. It does not share the antimuscarinic actions of other non-selective anticholinergics like atropine. It has a role along with benzodiazepines like diazepam in controlling the stress-induced ulcer as an adjuvant only. And H2 blockers like cimetidine and ranitidine, they block the H2 receptor and thereby prevents the gastric acid secretion. Proton pump inhibitors, which inhibits the common final step in the secretion of the acid. Antacids are used for chemical antagonism to neutralize the gastric acid. They are the commonly available OTC drugs. And prostaglandin analogs and sucralfate and CBS are used as cytoprotective ulcer protective drugs which coats the ulcer. Thank you one and all.